as you said in the introduction, I was in Khan Yunis, in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, when the Israeli onslaught started. And from day one, the attacks struck confusion among the Palestinians because of their intensity and if you like, barbarism. Because I wasn't there in 2014, but everybody told me that in 2014, despite the fact that it was horrific and very, very intense, but they used to give warnings to the Palestinians to leave their homes before hitting the houses, demolition, the buildings, etc. This time, the first thing we noticed is that there was no warning at all. Suddenly, F-16 bomb will land on top of a four-story building and destroy it completely, kill every civilian inside. I mean, the first scene I attended to was, I went especially there because I was adjacent to a charity, a children's center, which we established in Sheffield. From Sheffield, we supported, established completely, called Never Stop Dreaming. And it was for a family called Al Agha family. And 13 members of the family were killed under the rubble, including 3 children who attended Never Stop Dreaming Center, Yunus, Khalid, and Ahmad. And Yunus was the main singer in the children, if you like, singing group. It was horrific scenes. And as I said, this struck fear among Palestinians. What is happening? And then same day, Al-Bashiti family were hit the same way, bringing a house on top of them, killing 11 people. Abu Najah family, the following morning, 26 people. And we started to count families that we know very well. Of course, the biggest shock was the collective punishment of forcing the Palestinians from the north to flee under bombing, under threat of being killed, to the southern part, which is in Khan Yunis, the biggest city in the south. In the past, we were used to this because they will ask people close to the eastern border. So places like Beit Hanun, Jahr al-Dik, the village of the town of Khuta'a, all of them knew the drill. So even before the war, they will leave because they know there'll be war. But this time it was extended to the north, all the north of the Gaza Strip, down to the Gaza Valley. And I started to notice in Khan Yunis streets real shocking scenes of hundreds and hundreds of people arriving every day. The weather was dry and relatively warm, so a woman will be hot in other people's houses. Men will sleep on the pavement, on cardboards. Real images which I recorded and showed on my Facebook page. And just like that, I mean, these like collective punishment, which, like, as you all know, I mean, under international law is a war crime, didn't distinguish between different economical classes of the Palestinians, because we started to do relief fund for children, for the victims and for people who are displaced from Sheffield. People supported it, and we did a lot of good work with hundreds of families. And then we will receive calls from families who are affluent. We know they were affluent in Gaza, and they had to leave under bombing with only their clothes, not even a penny in their pockets, and begging us to send them something, to be able to eat. And this is the scale of like the crimes that were committed. Even, as I said, comfortable people, university lecturers, doctors, they were all like in the same boat, like underprivileged people, poor people who had to flee as well. And these like shocking scenes kept swelling and swelling and swelling until the town, Khan Yunis, didn't have any single place in it that can take those newcomers. So people started to build makeshift like timber frames with plastic sheet, etc. As I said, they were lucky at the time there was no rain, while now, if you notice, watch the news, Gaza Strip has been under heavy rain for 3 days, and it's a real major problem for tens of thousands of people who had to flee from the north. So the collective punishment continued as well of people who were warned and ordered to leave from the north to the south. The same people were bombed in many families were killed who left from Beit Lahia, from Gaza, Beit Hanun. And I would mention two families I know personally. The At-Tawil family, 30 of them in Nusrat refugee camp were killed after leaving their homes in Beit Lahia. Al-Ajarma family in Deir al-Balah, again, the same thing. So the killing continued, and as I said, we can only get like confused more and more because they declared it as a war against Hamas. But from my own experience and away from rhetoric or slogans, I'll give you two examples of what happened to us in my neighborhood. 10 meters from where I was sleeping on the 24th of October, I just, heard this deafening noise. I saw the flames of two F-16 rockets targeting two flats on top of each other near 10 meters from where I live for my beloved cousins, Hatim and his family and Aziz and his family. Both of them had nothing to do with Hamas, none whatsoever. Aziz was a very respectable pharmacist, and Hatim had a small shop, and he worked hard to support his beautiful family. They were all killed, both families, with the people who were their hostel, 18 victims in total. 8 of them were children, my relatives. Hamza, a 9-year-old, survived for 11 days, but then he succumbed to his injuries. So that's the first example that it wasn't against Hamas, definitely, because this was targeting bombing, smart bombs. They just flew over our neighborhood and went to 2 flats specifically with no affiliation to Hamas. The more shocking incident happened again to a group of my relatives. Jamal, Isam, and Imad. Jamal was my childhood friend, and I played basketball for Khan Yunis team, represented Khan Yunis within basketball, volleyball, and table tennis. His son, Tawfiq, and his pregnant wife, Dana, his daughters, Hala, and Iman, they were all killed in this. Isam, his brother, was another very good child friend, his wife and 3 daughters. Imad survived, but his wife and 2 kids died. Altogether, 12 civilians. And to prove that it's nothing to do with Hamas, Jamal is the general secretary of Fatah movement in Khan Yunis, in my town. And you know that Fatah and Hamas are not, are enemies politically in the Palestinian, inside the Palestinian camp. So that again, and I'm giving you only two examples of long list of incidents like these, which were targeted, deliberate, and people in those victims were none whatsoever to do with Hamas. Of course, I witnessed and I suffered. Obviously, I'm on my own with my son, but I suffered the collective punishment of cutting off water and electricity because Israelis declared it. Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, he said it openly that we are fighting human animals, as you heard, and we're not going to allow them electricity, water, medicine, and food. So he said we will not allow this because we are fighting human animals. We started to feel this after 10 days of the Israeli onslaught. The shops started to run out of goods and supplies for people. Cutting off water affected us really badly. As I said, I was myself and my son, but big families who rely on water and rely on electricity to be able to pump water to the tanks on top to be able to have water, which is obviously the life of any household. And this went on for the last, 4 weeks, 3 weeks of my stay. No water, no electricity, not whatsoever. Severe shortages. Bakeries suffered, of course. When I was there, 2 bakeries were bombed. The queues, I noticed queues on the bakeries in Khan Yunis. I monitored two bakeries, and the queues kept swelling from 70 meters. I actually measured it 430 meters of queue to get a loaf of bread. A friend of mine called Muhammad al-Juju queued for 9 hours from 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock to get 1 loaf of bread. The collective punishment was really, really massive. And they didn't care about it. They kept threatening bombing more and more. The north of the Gaza Strip during my stay suffered more than the south. Now the south is suffering more. But the south as well, my town, I attended 3 horrific carpet bombing scenes. You know, the first one was Al Akhras family in the town of Khan Yunis, my own town, when 73 people died, 67 of them from the same family, Al Akhras, when 2 4-story buildings were brought down with two half-ton bombs from an F-16 or F-35. And Block G, when 62 houses were destroyed, 27 of them completely, the rest were severely damaged. And Abu Shammala quarter in the western part of the camp of Khan Yunis, again, 57 victims. All, of course, the Israelis claiming that we got a Hamas militant, as they call them, or Hamas operative. And this is, to me, is very terrible from 2 points of view. First of all, it's a cowardly attack just to get one to kill 73 with the 57 or 63. And secondly, it's collective punishment. Again, we are talking about collective punishment. All this obviously spread fear. Every day the attacks were happening. Babies were killed. Now I'm aware that 1,100 babies among 10,000, including 2 of my own relatives, when they killed 11 members of Umm el Farra's family, including 2 breastfeeding babies, Suwar, a girl, and Rauf, breastfeeding baby boy. So the crimes kept continuing, and obviously with the flux of people, that was unbelievable. Situation got worse and worse. As I said, food supplies started to decrease, and people were really forced to live a life they have never experienced, because for the first time, Israel cut off water and electricity. And when people talk about genocide, and obviously the pro-Israeli, please let me know when I'm 2 or 3 minutes from the end so I can sum up. I know I'm allowed 20 minutes, so I don't want to go over. When we talk about genocide, which the Israelis are trying to defend themselves and their supporters, all that's ridiculous. No, I mean, definition of genocide, and those are not my words. I'd like to refer everybody to an Israeli professor of international law called Zaf Sigal. Because sadly, when we talk, the Palestinians, I know good people like you listen, but the world doesn't listen because they think, oh yeah, we don't say anything. But when Israelis, and this guy is an international law professor, and he had an interview with Owen Jones. I don't know if I watched it, but I commend it very much. Just right, genocide and Owen Jones. And he defined it as 2 things: intent and actions or behavior. We talked about behavior. But the intent, and I know that most of you have heard, but I'd like to remind you of some of the horrific intentional or statements that show a lot of intent to carry out genocide. A cabinet minister, Eliyahu, Benjamin Eliyahu, said that Gaza Strip should be hit with a nuclear bomb. The rabbi of Safad, and sadly the rabbi, said that killing Palestinian men, women, children is a religious duty. Netanyahu said himself that we are the children of light, the children of darkness, and we are fighting the Amalek in the Torah understanding are the non-Jews in the area who were ordered by God, like the Jews are ordered by God to kill every single one of them. Of course, when I say that, I don't want to push or promote religious hatred, but they are doing it. They are doing it, sadly, and this is the last thing we want. We never, ever push for religious hatred. We don't want the struggle to be defined under religious terms, because we know exactly that it's an imperialist project that resulted in the creation of the state of Israel on the ruins of the Palestinians. So all these statements, including, of course, Mordechai Kidar as well, I don't know, this is something I don't think people listen to it. He was asked to comment on what Yoav Gallant, the Minister of Defense. Mordechai Kidar was an advisor to Netanyahu for long years, and he is a professor in Bar Ilan University in Haifa. He said, they told him, how do you respond to what Yoav Gallant said, that we are fighting human animals? He said, I will not promote them to the level of animals, because that will be an insult to animals. And as the South African government presented 100 statements of what I just said. So the intent is there, and they're bragging about it. The soldiers, one of them, again, this video should go viral because it's the truth of those soldiers and how they behave in the Gaza Strip. He said on video, which I saw, I couldn't find any babies to kill, so I settled for a 12-year-old. And then, of course, that famous video of about 60 soldiers dancing, singing, what we are going to destroy Gaza, who we are going to kill the Gazans, etc., which was used in South Africa. 2 days ago, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Ghada, she told me that they bombed her house. She had to leave. They occupied the house. When they left, she went there. In her bedroom, she found all her knickers online inside with Hebrew written on them. So this is the behavior that they do. It's really unbelievable savagery. The arrest of Palestinians, people don't report on that. Thousands are being arrested all over the Gaza Strip. Now it's Khan Yunis. They built points on the western part of the Khan Yunis camp, and they arrest people. And we saw the way they treat them. We saw the way they treat them, and the humiliation, the beating, the starvation, for starvation, denial of sleep. And when they leave them, they are really, really, they show a lot of suffering on their faces, a lot of the results, because most of them has nothing to do with Hamas again, the vast majority. But then, so the crimes are being committed, and we are witnessing it. I've seen it myself, but what's happening now is even worse than what I saw. And I think that what is happening in Britain is really interesting in terms of the popular movement and the support for the policy in the streets. But I really think it's a big challenge for us to take the next step up. What is this step? I'm not sure what it is. That's something that needs to be collectively thought about, because the presence in the states is a must, but it has to happen with something else. Obviously, in the terms of exposing Israel more and more, continuation, of course, with what in Israel and whatever it represents, and insisting on defining Israel as it is a criminal state which carries out war crimes all over Palestine, and to put this struggle on the rails of internationalism, because what's happening in Israel is as a result of support of imperialist, capitalist countries which see their interest in Israel dehumanizing Palestinians, destroying Palestinians for the benefit of the Western reactionary Arab regimes. We should continue with that. I will end with a message of optimism and hope. What I saw in the Gaza Strip was really, really interesting. I saw the suffering. I saw people being bombed. I saw people being killed. I mentioned Aziz and Hatim, and I just want to say that my beloved cousin Hatim, we collected his body from 2 different areas. He was split in half by the bomb. One of the daughters lost the arm, and we found it 2 days ago under the rubble, close to the flat. But despite all this, the Palestinians somehow are very strong and very resilient. And when I look at it, I look at it from 2 angles. One of pride that these people are resilient, but then on the other side, on the other angle, I say to myself, my goodness, those people are so resilient because they've been suffering this day in and day out, although the intensity is more, but they've seen small scale of this all their lives. And that's what made them resilient. And that saddens me. But the resilience is there. And this resilience will not go away. And I am very optimistic that despite the severe destruction, the unbelievable collective destruction of the Gaza Strip, that given the chance, the Gazans, the Palestinians, with the help of everyone that cares about them, will be able to rebuild Gaza and return back to their lives. And that's something we must insist on, and that's something we must continue to support after the dust settles and after the Israelis stop their crimes. We cannot afford but to support the Palestinians. We cannot afford to be impartial. We cannot afford to stay silent when these crimes are committed. Thank you very much. I hope I haven't gone over 20 minutes.
You're actually spot on. So thank you, Musheir. Yes, thank you, Musheir. We turn now to John Howard, who has been active with PSC here or in Durham, County Durham, and is a key contact with a village that County Durham PSC supports in the West Bank, Umm el Kheir. John goes over, as I understand, at least once a year, and is very recently back from a trip to the West Bank, the South Hebron Hills, and el Kheir itself. And one of the truly, among all the other atrocities of what's happening in Gaza, is that it has become the pretext for increased settler incursions into the villages and communities, Palestinian villages and communities of the West Bank. So John is going to talk about the situation currently in the West Bank. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Mark. I'm hoping I can get a PowerPoint up for you. So now do you get the picture of the, yeah, I just put this photograph in order to illustrate just the absence of people in Bethlehem in particular. This was the only hotel in Bethlehem that was open at all. And you can see the two plates on the table at the end here there were in fact 4 people staying in a hotel that normally would have 450 people at this time of year in it, and would be one of 40 hotels in Bethlehem that would be full at this time of year. The impact upon Bethlehem is huge because they were just recovering from the COVID pandemic, and now they've lost all of the visitors they normally have, and as a result their economy is in tatters. The Church of the Nativity, normally packed out, empty, and the Manger Square, which again is normally packed out, is totally empty. I took a photograph of this banner which was up in Manger Square on the municipality building, and a slide just showing shops with their shutters down, and again Church Nativity, Manger Square empty, and Star Street normally packed out, totally empty. Talking to one of the shopkeepers, he said he really hasn't sold anything since the 7th of October. And many of the banners that are supporting individuals blossoming even more than ever, expressing the sense of anger and desperation that exists on the streets of Bethlehem. It was mentioned in the introduction that the link is with Umm el Kheir. I travelled from Bethlehem down to Hebron and then on down into Umm el Kheir. Travelling in the West Bank is extremely difficult now. Those of you who are used to the West Bank are used to travelling from place to place relatively quickly. 20 minutes and you can be from Bethlehem to Hebron. It took me well over 2 hours, and that was going on mud tracks and to dodge checkpoints and so on. It was really very difficult to get to Hebron. When I got to Hebron, I was staying with Hamed, or Hamed's organization, and Islam, who is, many of you know Hamed. Islam is Hamed's colleague. It was he who took me across to Umm el Kheir. His comment was, we'll go into Umm el Kheir, we'll go quickly, we'll speak with the people and get straight out. Because if the settlers see that there's a car there, and if the settlers see that there's an international presence, they will be in the village, threatening the villagers straight away. So the comment was that it was the safest thing to do was to go and speak with them quickly and then get out. This is Umm el Kheir. You can see that it is a Bedouin village, of course, and many of you who know of it, have seen pictures of it before, know that many of the buildings that have been built have been covered with Bedouin tents in order that from the air they look as if they are ordinary Bedouin tents, not permanent structures. But you can also see some of the destruction that that settlers have wreaked upon Umm el Kheir, photographed here. That is damage that's come from settlers. The children's playground is supported and has been funded internationally, but the settlers from Carmel settlement, which is right alongside Umm el Kheir, have been repeatedly visiting. You can see how close it is. We've had photographs like this before. In the foreground is part of the Umm el Kheir village, and in the background, behind the fences, is the Carmel settlement. The polytunnel there is part of Umm el Kheir, and they use it for growing vegetables and so on. They've been banned from attending the tunnel, the polytunnel. They've been told that anybody who tries to go there will be shot. And so they haven't been able to do anything to look after the crops that normally they're growing there. And the limitations on where they can graze the sheep, you can see some of the sheep out there very close to the village. It is now so limited. It's about 100 yards away from the village is all that they're allowed to go with their sheep. And the members of the village I was talking to were saying that the milk production of the sheep has gone down hugely, and that means, of course, they can't produce cheese, and it affects the whole diet of the people. I was told by Hamid, who is the village chair of the village council. He said that people in Umm el Kheir for the first time are now going hungry because they simply don't have enough food getting into the village, particularly for the children. This photograph was one that I thought was particularly relevant. Many of you will know the photograph that we've seen before, which commemorates Har Suleiman, who was killed by Israeli settlers just over a year ago. Well, I suppose 2 years ago now, to be precise. And this is the picture we've seen in the past. And you can see the Palestinian colours that are there. If I go back to the previous slide, then you'll see that the colours of the Palestinian flag have been painted out. And this is one of the things that the settlers are doing a lot at present. They're burning Palestinian flags. They're painting out any artwork which has got Palestinian flags on it. They're painting out those colours, and it's a part of what seems to be an attempt to destroy and prevent any identity of Palestinian identity within the West Bank. It's especially true in Area C. I've heard this in quite a few villages in Area C. Some of you will recognise this picture of the Babazawa checkpoint in Hebron. I wasn't able to go through the checkpoint, though I did go into H2 in Hebron. And there is still a curfew for those who are living in H2 at present. During the daylight hours, in the middle of the day, movement into H2 is not fully restricted, but it is very limited. Between 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock, it's allowed. Beyond those hours, there is a curfew on for all Palestinians within the H2 area of Hebron. One of the things that's happened in the time since the 7th of October is a huge expansion in settlements. This is the Neve Daniel settlement, not very far from Bethlehem. And in the foreground is a school. To the right of it, if you look to the far right, there's a whole set of what look like porter cabins. They're often referred to as caravans in Palestine. Those caravans on the right are totally new, and it's a new area of housing being developed for Neve Daniel. Alongside Neve Daniel, just a short distance away is a totally new outpost that's being built during November. Again, you'll notice that it's porter cabin type structures, and this is a totally new outpost, and again one of many. I haven't been able to get the figures for how many new outposts there are, but it's clear that there's been a huge expansion of outposts in the time since the 7th of October. But one of the most difficult things is the huge number of road closures. This is a road from Bethlehem to name of the place is gone for a moment. We'll come back in a moment. But it's a road which limits, which normally would be the main road going through to Bethlehem. For some time, it has been blocked further up, but it's now totally blocked once again at another point. There's as I travelled around the West Bank, I think it's fair to say, I saw probably 100 of these different closures that have been put in since the 7th of October. And even the major towns like Bethlehem, Hebron and Yatta, the 3 towns I went to, each only now have one access route into them. The one for Bethlehem is the road going out past the Hebron road, going past the Dahisha refugee camp. And that is, you still can go on that onto Route 60, but that's the only road out of Bethlehem where you can use where you can drive out. In Hebron, again, there's only one road you can drive out from Hebron, and the same is true from Yatta. In Yatta's case, that's just a mud road that you can go on. But the impact of that is that the major cities of the West Bank are now totally divided from each other. It's difficult to go by public transport from one to the other, and lorries, coaches, any kind of normal commerce between the cities of the West Bank is extremely difficult now because of the lack of access to them. And in addition, there are a huge number of Israeli observation posts. You see these 2 that I photographed here. They're quite close to Neve Daniel again. And they've got, when I was just walking down this road, I could see that there was somebody with binoculars watching me from those. So the supervision is huge on people anywhere moving about around the West Bank. I think we ought to remember that the suffering in Israel as well. I flew to Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv and then went to Jerusalem, and these banners with pictures of the hostages are very, very widespread indeed. And there is clearly, in talking to Israelis, it is very clear that there remains a huge anger about the holding of the hostages since the 7th of October. I don't know how many of you, but some of you may well know Munther Isaac, the Lutheran pastor of the Christmas Lutheran Church in Bethlehem. He has been speaking quite widely on social media, talking about the birth of Jesus at Christmas, and talking about that the birth of Jesus this year is in the rubble of Gaza. This picture has been circulated quite widely. I spent some time talking with Munther Isaac, who I know very well, and he just speaks about the terrible sense of loss. We've heard that from Musheir earlier on, but every person in the West Bank knows somebody in Gaza who died or has suffered in other ways. And so there is a sense of desperation, fear, and concern that when the military activity in the Gaza has been finished, in whatever way that means, then it's going to be the West Bank that's going to be similar treatment to in the West Bank, with each of the cities now cut off from each other. It is there's a sense of vulnerability, not only in Area C, in the country areas, but also in the towns. So a huge sense of fear and apprehension about what the future holds. I hope that's given you some picture of life in the West Bank. I have to say, when I got back to England, I just felt absolutely exhausted. Not particularly because of the activity that I'd done, but more from the sense of despair, the sense of anguish that I heard from one person after another in the conversations that I had while I was there. I do apologise for the difficulty I had in sharing screen. I'm sure it was a measure of my incompetence rather than anything else. But I hope that nevertheless, from the pictures and from the things I've said, you've had something of a picture of the situation in the West Bank.
Thank you, John. That was hard to hear, but very interesting actually, and it's one of the minor tragedies from what's happening in Gaza is we're not hearing or seeing what's happening in the West Bank. So it was very interesting to see those pictures. I think what we'll do now is, if anyone's got any questions for John or for Musheir, if you raise your hand, we'll go over to you and you can ask your question.
I'm waving my hand like mad, but nobody's taking any notice of me.
So go for it.
Excuse me if I start coughing in the middle. It's just a very simple question. I haven't been to the West Bank since, I think it was September 2011, which is quite a long time ago. What's it like getting in there now through the airport? I remember, the stupid questions they asked, and the silly men standing there with big grin on the faces as if they were pleased to see you. Well, all they were trying to do was trick you into saying you were going to the West Bank, which I didn't. Oh, I'm going to see the holy places, which is what I'd been advised to say. And then when I got to the holy places, I was pushed around by the Orthodox priests. It was horrible. Very nice. That I don't mean, sorry, not the whole experience, but those bits of the experience. It was really bad coming back as well. And I'd been warned about this to the extent that I made notes of what I'd seen and what I'd done. And I typed them up and I emailed them to myself so that there was nothing on me to indicate, I had no written record on me of what I'd seen and what I'd done. What's it like now at the airport? Is it just as bad as it was?
Um, uh, it is very difficult to judge what it would be for other people. At present, it's only El Al that's flying to from England to Tel Aviv. So I reluctantly booked with El Al, and I was quizzed for a long time before being allowed onto the aircraft, and then quizzed again when I arrived in Israel. I have been to and from Israel on many occasions, so I am used to being questioned. It normally does involve a fair bit of questioning. What was interesting this time was that, having spoken initially to somebody who I'm sure was a employee of El Al, another person, clearly more senior, and I'm pretty sure it was Israeli security, who had been called across to me. And it was interesting that he had access to things that he could never have found out from my passport. For example, he said that I had been living in Bet Jala, so he knew that I'd been living in Bet Jala. So it was that was interesting, and that hasn't happened to me before. So it was difficult. I was expecting it to be difficult, though, and I'd worked out exactly what I was going to say. It was also difficult getting to and from the West Bank because of closures and not knowing where you could go in and where you couldn't go in. As I say, there's only one road for vehicles to go in to Bethlehem, but walking in was also difficult. I was told when I left, when I was in Jerusalem, checkpoint 300 was open. So I went to checkpoint 300 to walk in at checkpoint 300, and it was closed by the time I got there. So then I had to get other buses around to, if you know, those of you who know Bethlehem, the DCO's office, the district commanding officer, and they were allowing people to walk past there, but under the direct supervision of Israeli soldiers. So it's quite an intimidating kind of atmosphere. So it wasn't easy to get into the West Bank at the present time. And I think people who weren't used to the situation would have found it, prohibitive, really.
So I should have said thank you. So it's not impossible then, it's just, I can't remember when I flew what airline I went with. I don't think it was airline. I think I'd have remembered if I had, but there was no quizzing before you got on the aircraft. Once I was on, I ended up sitting beside somebody who was just chatting, but it turned out she lived in Jerusalem, and I had to, I had to bite my tongue. So 3, 4, whatever it takes. I can't even remember how long the flight was, but however long it was for, I had to bite my tongue. Oh yes, I have friends who live in Golders Green, which is true.
I see we've got a couple, Alice and Thea, got questions.
Yes. Can I just ask, John? I understand that a lot of Palestinians formerly worked, had permits to work in Jerusalem, presumably doing jobs that Israelis didn't want to do. And am I right in thinking that those people have now been stopped from working?
Yes, that's right. And indeed, at Umm el Kheir, some of the men from Umm el Kheir used to work in Israel, and as a result, bring money back to support the village, whereas they're now not allowed to travel there. I'm also told that Israel has done a recruiting program to the Philippines in order to replace Palestinian workers, with clearly the implication that even after the present troubles, whenever that is, they are not going to reopen the borders for Palestinians to work in Israel.
And what sort of response have they had from the Philippines?
Well, all I heard was that they're doing a recruitment program, and that what I heard said was thousands of people from the Philippines are now working in Tel Aviv. In addition to, there had already been a significant number of people from the Philippines working in Israel, but I'd been told that there are thousands more. I haven't seen any specific statistics on it. This was word of mouth from a number of people who I spoke with. So I think it is very difficult from that point of view, and that's a major loss of income to Palestinians again.
Yeah, thank you. Thea, you're muted.
Yeah, I've had to unmute. Right, I have to put my specs on to do that. What was I going to say? First of all, is Musheir at the end of that absolutely unbearable story. He was saying that we have to. Sorry, I've got a bit of a bad chest. That we have to move on to what we do next, and that's been something that I think a lot of us have been considering. Is we've been waving flags, we've been, sort of shouting slogans, having petitions signed. We send them off, and for the most part, get no response. The media's gone quiet because, after all, people want to change from the same story. Although this evening we noticed on Radio 4 News, was it? They did a fairly good coverage of the attack in the Jenin hospital today.
Yes.
But how? I think we really need to focus on what we can do, because it is just okay. Everyone's protesting, but how can we try and change anything? I mean, to me, it seems that one of the things is to keep things in the media, and maybe we don't do enough. We know the Zionist lobby is fantastic. It's huge responses and letters in and comments. And I just think we really need to do something where we feel we have some impact. Apart from, obviously making sure people know what's going on the West Bank, which is, and what might happen next inside to people, in the north of Israel for the most part. But I mean, what's happening in Gaza, everyone knows it's horrendous, but you could only take so much in. And the media seem to want their next magazine story rather than, continue with the same one. And I want us to try and focus on what the hell we can do, really. And any ideas from anyone?
Yeah, I think I share with you all what you said, and I think the solid steps now which are being taken by the ICJ and the ICC, which I'm happy to say that I'm one of the witnesses for a case against the Israeli government and against the British government, charges of genocide, support the genocide of the British government, that have been filed by the ICC, International Criminal Court, and Scotland Yard. I think this is something that we should, because they are appealing to everybody everywhere to give them cases and evidence, etc. I think each in their places, all of us, we should find ways of finding some human rights lawyers who can come on board this case, because these cases are big, very big. I mean, we all saw the ICJ, although the ruling was, to be honest, let's be positive, parts of it were good, but it was disappointing in the sense that it allowed Israel to continue for a month. It's killing, and I would disagree with John. I don't think he meant it. It's not military activity in the Gaza Strip, John. It's crimes, killing, torture, genocide. So we really need to be supporting cases to be add to what's been applied to being filed with the International Criminal Court. As individuals, we can do that. ICJ is for the countries. So I don't know if you heard of an organization called ICJP, International Center for Justice in Palestine. They're based in London, and they are the ones who are filing the case against the Israeli government and the British government with the ICC and Scotland Yard. So maybe in your area, encouraging some of the human rights lawyers to come on board with the ICJP, or even have their own collective work to gather evidence and submit it as a charge against the Israeli government. This is something solid, because that definitely will, as we say in Arabic, if it wouldn't hit them directly, it would defend them. You know, it will really tar their reputation, and it will really add to supporting the Palestinians in a very, very effective way. The other thing which I think is really important, but it's very, very ambitious, is to find our way of finding our own media channel in Britain. I've said this now the third time in my talks, and this is the third time I say it. I really think we should think big about having a professional media body, no matter how small it is, but that will be like there for us, cold or hot, bloodshed or not bloodshed. And it's like mainly for Palestine and other good causes. This is ambitious, because I'm not talking about voluntary work. I'm talking about having a kind of satellite channel with 2 or 3 officers working as well with. So it needs a lot of support, a lot of finance. It will not happen through voluntary work and donations, but maybe we should need all of us to think outside the box of how we can go beyond our members here and go to bodies in the Arab world, because the CJP is supported by affluent Palestinians worldwide. So maybe they will support something like that, but it needs to be collective. Now we need to work on it. But yes, it's a challenge to us. What's the next step up? It's a challenge. Of course, we all agree that the pressure should be put on politicians. And the elections now, there is the issue of the Muslim vote. I think that should be really emphasized, that Muslims who normally vote Labour, and the Labour MPs have let us all down. I don't know about that, but here in Sheffield, their stand was disgusting, you know, with the exception of 1 or 2 who just abstained. But the rest, the abstentions for ceasefire are really shameful. But yes, we really need to work on the politicians more. And obviously, the obvious of supporting the boycott, definitely the boycott of Israeli, or whatever is Israeli, and continue with that. But really, we have to think about what's the next step.
Thank you. Could I make a response as well? First of all, I'd agree with Musheir. Engagement with ICJ. There's the opportunity to do so directly. There's an email address that you can go to. So I'd agree with that. But but could I make 2 suggestions, 2 comments that strike me as possibilities? I mean, I think many of us have been writing to our MPs and so on, and constantly saying we wanted more. I noted this morning that on the news it said that David Cameron had indicated a willingness to recognise the Palestinian state. And I think that's the first time any Conservative has said that. And I wonder whether tactically we would do well now to encourage that, because it's right and proper that we must oppose the government in lots of things it's doing. But when it says it would do something that we've been arguing for a long time, I would have thought that it would be a good moment to actually say, well, yes, you've said it, now why don't you do it? Recognise the Palestinian state. The second comment I'd make, and I don't know whether Musheir would want to make a comment in response to this, but one of the things I find in the West Bank, one of the problems in the West Bank at present is everybody's very frightened to speak, because there's so many detentions going on. But when you're talking to people in privacy, I often ask the question, who do they feel ought to lead the Palestinian people? And the one response I get time and time again is Marwan Barghouti. Now, Marwan Barghouti, I understand, was moved from the prison he's been held in for a long time, just after the 7th of October. And publicly, there's no knowledge of where he's being held at the present time. This was obviously in order to keep him out of the media, any possible media contact to him. And I do wonder whether we're getting to the point where a pre-Marwan Barghouti campaign is actually something that ought to be begun. I just throw that in. I'd be interested to know Musheir's view on that, or other people's views, because it does seem to me, as a person who was involved a lot in campaigning for free Mandela and for the end of apartheid, that having an individual helped the identification with the cause. And that's not been something that's been successful as far as Palestinians are concerned up till now. I throw that in. It's a bit of a wild card kind of suggestion, but I'd be interested in knowing Musheir's view on that.
Yes, yeah. I would say to this, John, that the campaign does exist.
Yes, it does.
And if I'm not mistaken, 2006, Fadwa Barghouti, his wife,
yes,
came to Britain on a tour. She stayed with me, actually, but the campaign died after very, very short period of time. The sad fact is that the Palestinian Authority are sidelining Marwan Barghouti completely. And that will mean that, and it's because of the power struggle, Fatah movement. They know that he's the most popular.
Yes.
Because of his long years in prison, and because he's not regarded as corrupted as figures of the Palestinian Authority, who all of them are accused by Palestinians of corruption. You'll be very shocked to know that the latest survey gave the Palestinian Authority less than 1% support among Palestinians. This is really shocking. So yes, having a figure is really important. But the problem is, as I said to you, the Palestinian Authority has sidelined Barghouti completely, to the extent they don't even mention him in their literature. That it will make it difficult to unify the Palestinians around him, if you like, because they're still influential with they're the paymasters. The sad thing is, for instance, Fatah members in Gaza, I know for sure, and I know, for instance, in my town, Khan Younis, most of them, the level of anger at the leadership, but all of them, her families, or whatever, and they know that if they raise their voices. So, yes, I will agree with you, but it will be a difficult one because it will not be supported by executive people within the Palestinian camp. You know, Hamas will support that wholeheartedly because he's in good relationship with them. Jihad will support it. Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine will support it, but definitely the big problem will be within Fatah itself because of the control of the corrupted leadership on the cadre of Fatah. But yes, by all means, we could do really. That's something that could be reactivated, if you like, and I'm sure Fadwa Barghouti will be more than happy to hear what you just said. But she did try her best, but for the same reasons she failed.
Thank you. There was somebody else who had, I think Anne had her hand up one stage.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my camera doesn't work. I need to sort it out. I've got 3 points to make. Number one is that the Durham local MP has spoken out twice in Parliament calling for a ceasefire, and she told me that she's had loads of letters. And certainly when we've stood on the bridge, loads of people have told me they would write to her. So that's been my main message to people, is to write to the MP. So she has had loads of letters and she has really stuck her neck out. She lost a job with Angela Rayner's secretary as a consequence of sticking her neck on the line for a ceasefire. number two, my point number two is that the demonstrations that in London and around the country and around the world have worked. And I think that the blackout in the news is because so many people in this country are demonstrating. I think there's been when you read about the demo of the day after it happened, the fourth biggest demo in the country was barely reported. They don't put the numbers anymore. They basically are worried because such a huge percentage of the population actually sides with the Palestinians. So the demos are working, and I think it's been a purposeful lack of news about it because they are working. And then, as John Howard said, there's incredibly important news today, and that is that Cameron has stated that amid huge anger from some MPs, that Britain will unilaterally promote a two-state solution and starting now in order to promote peace. So I really am wondering what is going on here, whether it's just to get the hostages out or I don't know. I've noticed a huge number of extra notice being taken of Holocaust Day. Obviously, we need to take notice of Holocaust Day, but I've been shocked how many programs have been on the radio, how many plays have been on the radio. There's been there's this huge thing going on about the sexual assaults that have taken place on October the 7th. And now today, the Israelis are saying that the hostages are being abused as well. There's new news about that. So, and I'm not sure how much of this is true. So that's going on today in the news as well. But I think it would be really, really good to write to Cameron, to write to the government and say that this is a wonderful idea and that we should completely support, get as many other groups to support it because they seem very serious about it. So thank you.
Has anyone else got any questions? Otherwise, I think I'll say thank you to everyone for attending this evening, and especially big thanks, of course, to Musheir and for John for sharing those stories, which of course are really hard to hear, but I think very necessary that we keep listening. Patricia, do you have something?
Can I just say something quickly? Sorry, my brain's not working very well. My throat's in a mess. Is there anyone here, or does anyone know of anybody who is not in Durham and in fact is in North Yorkshire? Because when I had an effort to collect some signatures in Northallerton a few weeks ago, I had help from 3 people, but all of them had come from Durham. There were Thea, Ben, and John Medson. And it'd be really good if there was anybody, if anyone had any contacts in the area. I appealed to the Green Party with total lack of success, including, and I sent an email, personal email to our local Green Party county councillor, the chap who is our prospective parliamentary candidate when we eventually have a general election. And he didn't even answer, didn't even acknowledge my email. I've given up on the Green Party. It's an absolute dead loss, apart from somebody I heard about when I was in Darlington on Saturday, who lives in Richmond. But I think we should. I don't think we should leave it there. We're never going to do terribly well in this constituency. There's far too many Rishi supporters, but it's worth trying. And he doesn't reply when I write to him about it either. Yeah, I've heard absolutely nothing from.
Sharon's waving there. I think it's Sharon.
That's me.
North Yorkshire.
Hi.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, just me, Patricia, Sharon.
Oh, sorry. Did you not?
Hi.
I thought it
It's
said
okay.
Sharon, but I
It's
couldn't
okay.
see your face properly, and I thought it was another Sharon. I'm thinking that your friend, I forget what it called, was it Dorothy? She passed my email address on, or she did actually pass my email address on to Una on Saturday after the Darlington demo, but I haven't heard anything from her.
Oh, right, okay.
So, you know, and that's what Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 3 days ago, more than 3 days ago, and I've heard nothing. So,
Oh, right.
mm,
Right. So
really difficult.
I got the petition form you sent me, Patricia. So I'm going to get
Yeah,
Jim
but can I
to
just sorry,
print
can I
a
just
load out.
we don't really want to sort of bother other people with this, people who are here. We can talk about this privately, but what I'm saying is there anybody who's here who is in our constituency or knows anybody in our constituency who might be able to help? I know you will. Now I recognize you. You're all you're in the dark.
I see what you were aiming for, yeah.
So presumably no answer means nobody's in this area, and nobody knows anybody in the constituency of the wonderful Rishi. Wow.
Surprise, surprise.
It's
up to us two, I think, to promote it, Patricia.
I think you need to move to Durham.
Who do we promote it to? That's the point. You know, who do we?
I have got people that I know within this constituency who I'm starting to get motivated.
Yeah, but hang on, but there's nobody here. I don't want to hold everybody up while we have a private conversation. But
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can I just say thank you very much and leave? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Musheir.
Thank you very, very much.
Thanks a lot.
We're very, very appreciative.
Thank you.
Shukran jazilan.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for this evening. So thank you everyone for coming. And I'll probably see most of you very soon.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Darren.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Thank you.